Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Saturday Morning RPG Show. My name is Jordan with a silent PH in the middle, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Sir Lucian. Over there, wearing his MCDM shirt at Lucian Gaming.
Yes.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Solar Eclipse Day. If you live in the Pacific Northwest, I do live in the Pacific Northwest, and I have clouds. But I told Lucian that if the clouds break, I'm probably going to grab my solar glasses and run out to go see it. So,
got my solar glasses. Very cool.
Glasses. Have you ever seen an eclipse?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't do them often. I've done one, where there was pretty famous. Is this one of the ones that aren't going to be around again for a long time, or when's our next one? You got all that info?
They always come back every 18 or 19 years. There's a very specific number. It's like 18 years, 7 months, 4 days, and 59 seconds or something like that. So it will be back this way in 18 years. This is a fire ring eclipse, which means it's not a total eclipse.
So you'll see edges.
So you'll see the edges. But in 2019? 2018? 2017? I don't remember. But the last one went right over where I live in Idaho. And we drove to a friend's farm and had the complete place to ourselves. And so I was like,
I think we talked about this on a show.
Oh, probably, yeah. And that was one of the coolest experiences ever, because that was a total, we were in the totality of it. And it was just like a 360-degree sunset. It was beautiful.
Nighttime sets.
Yeah.
Boom.
And in 2024, on April 8th, there will be another solar eclipse that goes from the southern Pacific over Mexico, over Texas, up through New York and Nova Scotia and stuff like that way, diagonal across the United States.
Newfoundland.
So, Newfoundland. There you go.
Yeah.
And for that one, actually, we have reservations, and we're going to fly to Mexico and go watch it there, because we just like it a whole bunch, and it's actually flying over my wife and I's anniversary, so we're like, that'll be like a fun thing to do. So
very fun. Sounds super cool.
Weather permitting, that's always the sad thing where you're like prepping for this and you're like, oh, it's cloudy like today. That's fun.
Yes, for sure.
But yeah, got me thinking about games and stuff. I always think about games, but how I love the idea of ley lines in games, where it's like, if we go to this spot and I cast this spell, it's going to be amplified. Or in my Planescape game, it was like when you were in this area of the nine, or when you were in this plane of existence, your illusion magic just didn't work. But this other type of magic went up to the nth degree. And I always thought that was kind of a fun way of like supercharging things. And I was thinking about like an eclipse, like that would be the ultimate. I guess like the last Airbender had the same thing, where the meteor was coming and all the firebenders were getting like really powerful. Like, I just like that idea of like, we have to strike now because we're super powerful because of this eclipse, but not just use it for the bad guy, but the good guys too. Like, we have to do something right now. That would be cool.
Yeah.
Or maybe a sword that's unbeatable, but only during a solar eclipse or something like that.
Very cool.
Super fun. So yeah, I might bounce out to go look at it. It's gonna peak in like 20 minutes, so we'll see. But I'll let Lucian
like
chat.
in your fantasy campaigns, there's so many things you could do with eclipses, right? There's so many kind of things that you could do that, yes, it's a spectacle event. It could be metaphysical, it could be a physics type thing happens, it could be a magical thing type happens, but it could just be the whole population just turns to fear all of a sudden. It's just nothing's actually happened, but people have gone crazy because they're just like, what is happening? Is the sky falling? Is the sun never coming back? That kind of fear. And then you let your characters kind of play through that. They have to play a character the players know, but they get a chance to play a character who doesn't know. And then sometimes it's fun to try to imagine something we can't ourselves imagine, right? That we just can't have that same context. I think that's what really role-playing, I think, is one of those draws that lots of people get to, because sometimes you can be in a situation that you'll never be in, but you can let your mind kind of think through, what would my character do? What would this character do? How do I play that, and how do I interact with the other people at the table to kind of see what that is?
I mean, think about how many times where in fantasy stories or something, it's like the earth, like what happened to the city? You're like, oh, the earth opened up and all these demons came running out. I don't know how it happened, but like if you think back to early eclipses, like some guy running across and it's just like, what's wrong? And you're like, the sky went completely black. It was the middle of the day. God's smiting us. Like they're just like, no, it's gods. Just an eclipse.
Or even gods. You go far enough back and it's like you think all the gods are there, so now maybe all the gods are mad at you, and it's like, oh no, what have we done?
It's pretty crazy.
We have been forsaken.
Super fun.
Cool.
I don't know. Yeah, I want to. I guess that kind of pushes into the idea that you should have a calendar for your game, but maybe not a calendar. Maybe you just need to have like an event, and then say like, okay, we're like 4 sessions away from the event happening, and you need to like get your act together.
I feel like early DMs, that was one of the things they always suggest, is having either steal a calendar so you don't have to do the work to make one, or at least have one, or make one if you're really into it, because it does add to the overall game and the overall immersion for your players to understand seasons are changing, weather is changing, holidays are happening. You can put eclipses and stuff on there. You can put all kinds of cool things that make the world feel a little bit more real when there is that calendar that kind of sets it in a little bit. So, cool.
Well, in other news, I guess we'll talk about some of the news that's going on.
Dungeons and Dragons news.
Dungeons and Dragons news. So, Wizards of the Coast this was interesting. A lot of people were penning this as, WotC's trying to like encroach on things like the Adventure Zone and Critical Role, and I'm like, I think they just were gambling. Well, I'll get into this, but what they're doing is they're creating a Forgotten Realms based D&D character set called the Fallbacks, and the Fallbacks is the name of their group, and so it's kind of like lovable misfit heroes who are probably bad at most of their jobs. And I think WotC wanted the Dungeons and Dragons movie characters to be this. You know, I think they wanted those characters to be like, and then we'll make comics about them and we'll make this. And they were great characters, but I don't know if it just didn't work or if they're going in a different direction. So the start off of this is the Fallbacks. It's going to be 5 characters, and it's like a bard, a cleric, a fighter, a druid, a wizard, or something. And or a rogue. I think the rogue is like the leader. And they have like a little animal companion monster thing. It feels very formulaic as they're building it. But speaking of formulaic, that the author of this didn't get to create them. The actual like D&D team crafted these characters and said, these are the characters we want to go on this adventure. And then they hired a writer, and the writer, who's probably very good, I don't know anything about her, but she's writing this book, and it's like, okay, could be cool. Who knows? But I think Wizards is understanding that, like, you know, the Forgotten Realms and all that other stuff, D&D is popular, but really it's these characters that people like. And so I think they aren't so much copying Critical Role as they're just like, we should make our own characters that we own. Because like Acquisitions Incorporated, like that is very popular, but WotC doesn't own those characters. You know, like they don't own those characters. That was part of the agreement when they started that podcast a long, long time ago, is that they're like, yeah, like we'll play D&D, but like we own the concept of Omen Drawn, and we own the concept of Jim Dark Magic. And just the merchandising for stuff like that is huge. So, so I don't know. They're the Fallbacks. I'm curious where this goes. If it's going to, I don't know, be a comics and a bunch of other stuff. It could be really cool, honestly. And like, if it's more fun, new stories, and it's new original characters that aren't Drizzt. And nothing against Drizzt, but I feel like Wizards of the Coast has been doubling down on Drizzt for a long, long time. And it's like...
It appeals to certain people. I don't think it appeals to such a wide audience. It's great. And for those that love it, they love it. But I don't know if that's the perfect character to appeal to the huge popularity of people that are out there right now.
And then just an introduction to a character as well. Like Drizzt has been around for so long. So... I don't know. This is and it's like, again, Drizzt is not a lovable misfit character. These are going to be like, we're bad at our job, but we somehow succeed, like Guardians of the Galaxy or all that.
Yeah.
That's
well,
kind
of. You remember
the
Harper books, right? So. I mean, this isn't the first time they've done books. It feels like they got out of doing books for maybe a decade. Yeah. Maybe now they're inching back in. But I remember reading the Harpers stuff. Yeah. And I thought the Harpers was great. That's how I knew Elminster, and like there were some cool stories there. And I kind of do miss a little bit of that, where they have good writers writing great stories, or at least good enough stories in a D&D world that we recognize. I do kind of miss a little bit of that. I think if I was more of a Drizzt fan, I would feel like, okay, I've got Drizzt, I can go through those novels. But since I haven't really latched onto Drizzt like I think a lot of the other people have, I feel like I haven't had a lot of cool characters that I could go and read their stories, because every now and then I just like a novel of, I've read some of the Magic Gathering novels. They're not great Lord of the Rings written stories, but they're good enough to get my imagination going and good enough to satiate my little appetite for, oh, that's a cool little story thing, or they're in the Dells and they're doing this cool thing, or oh, they're going into Myth Drannor and they're going to do all this cool stuff. Like, I do kind of miss some of that stuff. I like to read still. I like to do a novel. I'm big into the lit RPG, as we all know. I say it all the time, but I would love more D&D novels or little mini series, book series, or even a good lovable character crew. Fallbacks is a great name. I love that name as a group. That's
cool. Sky was saying like it's kind of like the Expendables. So I was like, yeah, that kind of feels like the same thing, or the Suicide Squad. Like, I think that's the vibe they're going for.
Lean into the humor.
It could be good. Who knows? I just think it's funny that whenever I guess I want to preface this. I don't want to defend WotC. They have done some really terrible, awful things like the OGL and things like that. But I do look at the community, and it seems whenever WotC does something, they're just like, oh man, they're trying to make their own Mighty Nine. And I'm like, well, yeah, like, why wouldn't they? I mean, they're not trying to steal anything. They're just making an original character. That's not against the rules, is it? Like, and why are we upset about this? Like,
because Hasbro, even from the beginning, when they wanted to do a toy line, you can go watch these really good series on Netflix that talks about the toys that made us, and it talks about even before they had a story and characters, Hasbro was like, okay, we've made the toys. We don't know anything about them, and they would hand these characters to writers like He-Man and all the and say, "Hey, now make a cool story about this. Now make a cool cartoon about this. Now make a cool novel or a comic book about this." And they were just making characters about it. So this is very kind of Hasbro. Like, we want characters, then we can make toys and cool stuff about it, and we're going to hand that off to creatives like writers and movie makers or cartoon makers, anime makers, and say, now give us stuff that's going to get this popular, because this is the toy line we're going to sell. So it sounds very Hasbro to me.
Yeah, it's very Hasbro. So, but it gets me thinking, like, when the Daggerheart for Critical Role was like, wow, this feels a lot like the Blades in the Dark system. And the Blades in the Dark guy, John Harper, was just like, yeah, it is, but like, that's okay. Like, it's just like, he kind of gave his approval of it, and everyone's like, oh, that's cool. Well, wow, Critical Role. But like, then I think about if WotC had done that, it would have been like, we would not have been forgiving. It would have been like, you have to do all this other stuff. And so it's things like this where I'm like, you're really upset that they're just making a book, like, and they're creating original characters. Like, it's not, I don't know. It just felt weird that every article I found and a YouTube video on it was all like trying to spin it like the next big like WotC downfall, and I was like, I don't think it is, but maybe I'm not seeing something.
OGL completely warranted all of the bad publicity they got, but that doesn't, I don't think, like I think I'm hearing from you, is that every single thing they do, it needs that same warranted, oh no, the sky is falling, they're super evil.
And I don't know, I haven't read the fallbacks yet. Obviously, it's not out, but I was like, I don't even think they're not like the Mighty Nine. It doesn't look like it's any kind of like they're trying to rip off those characters. No. Other than they're like, we're going to have a rogue, we're going to have this, but it's not like a goblin rogue. It's like,
so. We created those. Yeah.
So I just thought it was interesting. I don't know, whatever. Free League is releasing.
Love this company, though.
And I thought this was interesting. So, they're releasing a Vaesen campaign adventure. So this is like a 5-chapter book, like a kind of like you would think like a Curse of Strahd or a Tomb of Annihilation, but it's for Vaesen, which has been, and I think Free League in general has been kind of like, they did some adventure path stuff for, well, for Forbidden Lands specifically, but I was also thinking of Tales from the Loop. I think they had some adventures for Tales from the Loop, but this is the first time that like Vaesen's getting it. But I think Vaesen has a large following that they're kind of like, oh, people are actually really like this game.
I think it's called like the Flood and the something for the Loop.
Yeah, Things from the Flood. That was like when they were older and stuff. But I thought this was cool. So if you own Vaesen, maybe Vaesen sold really well the last year, and they're just like, oh, this is going to be really cool. That is coming out October 31st, and I just wanted to point it out because I thought it's not like a small 30-page adventure. Like it's a big campaign. And for people like myself who enjoy pre-written adventures, I was like, oh, that would definitely get me more interested in running Vaesen if I had
that definitely means it was successful, right? Because they're not going to do some add-on products if it wasn't popular enough that they think they could do some add-on products. And everything I've heard from people who've played or ran Vaesen, good things. I've never heard anybody say anything bad about it yet. And when I look at it, the artwork is captivating. I'm just like, it looks good.
So I think it's a sign that table RPGs in general are healthy. Like, you know, like clearly it's like, oh, this is kind of a niche one that I wasn't anticipating to have a big book, and we'll see how well it sells. But it's called The Lost Mountain Saga. It's based on a podcast of the same name, and the people that made the story podcast are also involved in writing this. So it cool. Sounds really cool. And then also with Free League is they're doing Dragonbane Bestiary. So we're going to have a big monster book for Dragonbane specifically. And they're taking pre-orders for that. So that's coming out. I don't know if it'll be Kickstarted, but they're taking pre-orders. So I assume not.
Yeah.
I don't know. But that's another sign of like, okay, people like Dragonbane, you know, like
Free League's able to put books out without doing Kickstarter. Not that they haven't done also Kickstarters, but I think they're also a publishing company that's big enough that when they want to do a product, they can. So it wouldn't be surprised. I would look it up, but yeah.
Yeah, I kickstarted the Forbidden Lands Bestiary. Like,
yes.
And so that was definitely
I did the box set.
Yeah. So I remember getting that.
That Forbidden Lands is so good.
I want to run it so bad. But now we're talking about playing Invisible Sun after Purple Planet's over, and I'm like, oh, I'm torn. Yeah. All the games I want to run. I just need like a year off and a bunch of friends who also have free time. Yeah, this was kind of cool. So I've heard really good things about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles RPG from 1985. Like a lot of people have nostalgia in their heart for this in a good way, that it was just a really fun game. And if you like TMNT, you know, the new movie came out that Seth Rogen did. I heard it was very good. I haven't seen it, but you know, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is always love it. Around. I feel like it's never going to go away because it's just a fun idea. But Palladium Books announced that they're going to re-release the 1985 RPG with new artwork. It's currently a Kickstarter that they have like a notify me on launch page. I think it's going to launch at the end of October. And so, I mean, get it. And I was thinking Chaosium did a reprint of one of the older Call of Cthulhu's, and I backed that a long time ago. And I think this is similar, where like I got a new print, but it was the original stuff in a cool box. And so you have kind of like a, I don't know, like a new old version of the game. So I have like second edition Sandy Peterson Call of Cthulhu, but it is like, I don't know, it's just really cool. So I thought that was really cool. Like, and they're going to have some new art, they said, but just in general, like the game's out of print. It'll be really cool to get a new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles RPG back. So
I love the show. I like it. I can't wait. I have it on my notify because I think it might be my November Kickstarter. I try to do one a month so that I don't get in trouble with the financier of the house.
I watched the original show and like had a lot of the toys and stuff. And then, of course, the live-action movies were very influential on my life.
The first movie was so good.
It was so ahead of its time, and they nailed it with the Jim Henson stuff. I haven't actually seen the other ones, the computer graphic ones that apparently weren't very good.
I think,
but the latest Seth Rogen one I heard was quite good. But it's one of those things where like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles has just like we were talking about, kids and different growing 80s. Up in different generations. Like you can meet a 50-year-old guy and then also meet like a 10-year-old boy, and they both have a favorite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. Like it was a big thing, and that movie was
Donatello.
Epic, so.
Let's go, Donnie.
I'm getting a lot of notifications for PAX Unplugged, which is November 30th to December 3rd in
I have my PAX Unplugged
Pennsylvania,
right,
I think. I was gonna go, but like it's just not in the cards now, so I can't, which is sad because I hear a lot of like cool creators are gonna be there. I think Bob Worldbuilder will be there, and probably Ted, probably other people. But it's one of those conventions I want to go to soonish at some point, so maybe next year. But they're gonna have lots of reveals, and I imagine we'll have lots of 2024 D&D announcements from WotC there. So.
Yeah, usually they do an At Kink show there of some sort too. So, and it's a little bit more if you've gone to Gen Con, which is much bigger, and it feels like you're in a convention of lots and lots of strangers, but they have the same interest. I always felt like PAX Unplugged was like it felt less people, so it felt more close, and I saw more people I knew there, and I got to hang out with more people, and I saw more of the people that I normally know just through the community or just through going to some of the other conventions were there, and it was a smaller space, so there wasn't as many places that you would just run into people 4 or 5 times a day, not just once. So it's definitely I like it for that reason. The event hall was pretty good, like a Gen Con, not quite as big. The only thing I hated about it, just for any of those that are thinking about going, is trying to park and get there was not great because it's downtown. And once you're in and everything's going on, it's cool. And there's lots of cool food places and places to hang out and do stuff. Not as many rooms for games and stuff. So that was a little bit hard if you were trying to find lots of different games to join and stuff. They were usually full pretty quick. So definitely jump on that. But I thought it was really cool. PAX Unplugged, and it was all tabletop gaming. There wasn't really being shared to do anything else. It was tabletop gaming. So pretty fun.
I also wanted to say there's a DMsGuild has a Ravenloft sale, and I put a link in the chat. And it's like 40 to 50% off of Ravenloft supplements, but a lot of these are Adventure League stuff, so really good for like one shots, like an evening of D&D and things like that. And then I just went down the rabbit hole of Adventures League this morning because I was like, oh my gosh, they're still like they've been doing Adventures League up into Dragonlance. And Spelljammer never got an Adventure League thing, but Dragonlance did, which I thought was interesting. But if you want some fun things, I think One Night Strahd is really good. Weekend at Strahd's is really funny, where it's Weekend at Bernie's, but it's Strahd, and there's a lot of cool stuff on there. So I'm gonna ditch you for like 2 minutes while I go look at the sun.
All right, I'm gonna talk here while he's doing that. So go look at the sun. So I know we have a little convention here in my town. So right after the show, I'm going to run over there to a really small kind of Comic-Con gaming convention here. And we used to also have one, I think it was called like Red Rover, or no, it was called Marmalade Dog. It was another one that's a nice small one that happens here in my part of the world. And so going to these small conventions are always fun to kind of support your local gaming groups. A lot of times your local companies are there, so you'll find out, like I was there and I found out some of the game companies that I've seen their big names, I didn't realize they were actually lived in my same area until I went to these smaller conventions and saw their booths that were set up, which is kind of cool. And then being able to play games with people that are from your area, you kind of meet those people that might be your comic book or your game store people, and a good way to meet other people that are maybe looking to play and role playing. And I know that we're kind of coming out of the everybody plays remote, which is great. But sometimes you just want to get to that table and you just want to roll and you want to play. Some of these places will have things set up like the one I'm going to has the BattleTech simulators set up, so you can get inside and play these old BattleTech simulators inside a cockpit they've been setting up for years and years and years, probably since the 90s. And they just set them up all the time. You can play them. And they were doing another fun one was the Star Trek bridge commander. They would have a place set up, and you could have you and your friends sit down and play that kind of stuff. So some of these small conventions are really fun. I recommend that everybody kind of look in your area, find out what little ones that are in your town or near your town or within, reasonable driving distance for you and your friends to go take a look at, because some of these smaller ones can be really fun too. I ran some games. I ran some mask games at those, and it was really well received because nobody had been running those. Like D&D gets ran at those. Pathfinder Society was big at these smaller ones, but then like the other games just didn't see as much light. So if you go there and you are willing to offer to play like I'll run 5 mask games, or I'll run this Tales from the Loops, or I'll run Kids on Bikes, you get a lot of interest to people there that they don't normally get to play those games. So I was just mentioning to the locals, there's a gaming convention here in town this weekend. So right after the show, I'm going to go over cool. to the fairgrounds and check it out. Last year it was pretty small.
Yeah,
I'm hoping that maybe it just gets bigger and bigger as they add on to it.
It's usually how they work if the people can stick with it. So there is people in the YouTube chat that want to know if you watch the YouTube chat, which I don't think you do. So
I didn't. No. Sometimes I have it up
because they're like talking and it's like, is he there? And sorry. Oh, there was a screaming child. I'm sorry. That's fine.
There was one screaming child in there.
So it's like just like a sliver now. It looked really cool.
But I am watching the Twitch chat, so you can chat there too.
With the Ravenloft sale that was coming out, it got me thinking about Halloween one-shots. And then I was just thinking of all of the different systems that you can run. And this correlates because I've been reading The Darkest House by Monte Cook Games.
Oh, yeah.
Which I bought at Gen Con and is really creepy. Might be a little too creepy for me. There's like certain sections in there that I'm like, I feel uncomfortable reading this. I don't think I would want to run it, kind of a thing, like, which is fine. It's not like not everybody has to like the same flavor of ice cream. But I was like, and they're very good about having like safety tools and stuff in The Darkest House.
Yeah.
So I actually filmed a whole video on it. It'll be on the Jocular Junction on Monday. But it's just really, it seems like it's good for a one-shot, but what's interesting about The Darkest House is you're supposed to take the characters from your everyday game, like maybe 5e, maybe things from the Flood, maybe Vaesen, and you incorporate them into The Darkest House. Like somehow they got sucked in, and you have to convert a little bit, but it's the idea of like, narratively, what is this sword attack trying to accomplish narratively, and then you use the 3d6 Darkest House system to kind of emulate that. But lots of fun puzzles and lots of cool things. So then I was thinking, like, if you run Halloween-y stuff, what's your system of choice? Like, do you want to just use 5e? Do you want to use OSR so it's like deadly? I don't know. Like,
for me, because Halloween still triggers, for me, teenage kind of thoughts, like thinking about going and trick-or-treating as a kid into my teenage years. It trigger Halloween to me is like thinking about like Goonies. Halloween to me is thinking about like those coming to age kind of stories. So for me, I'm always going to lean back on Tales from the Loop or Kids on Bikes. Monster of the Week, I think, would be another, because it lets me do a quick narrative story. It lets people be creative. It lets you play around with the setting very easily without having to establish too much. And I want quick, fast rules that just allow us to have a good, fun, entertaining time and not a crunchy time for the most part. I don't typically say, hey, let's do a big D&D game for Halloween. It's just a little bit too much crunch, a little bit too much combat, a little bit too much, even though I love it and that's all I play any other time. I think I want a more narrative thing.
I think it always also, like, if I have an active group that we're constantly running games, then it's fun to use those characters. So then I'd be like, no, let's do like a DCC spin-off.
No, I do that for the Christmas one. Like I always do like the one-off Christmas session that somehow bleeds into the game and the actual D&D game, and that worked out. But I think Halloween, I always think let's just go a totally different route. But yeah, keep going.
And so usually it's like, well, if we already have that going, I want to stay in that same system and just kind of do like a Halloween one-off. But yeah, Kids on Bikes is my favorite, just because that's what I've ran a lot of my Halloween games in. And the character creation for that is so easy. easier than something like Monster of the Week, which is not hard as far as character creation.
Oh yeah.
But like with Kids on Bikes, it's like you're the loner weirdo. Oh, cool. And like you just kind of know immediately the trope that you're playing and how you fit in with the group and like what you can do. And I like that it's so approachable to just sit down, make characters in 30 minutes, build the world in 30 minutes, have like an hour or 2 hour adventure, and then we had 3 hours of gaming and it was really fun, you know?
Yeah.
So,
and I always like a lot of those narrative games usually let the players help with creating. So just like in Tales from the Loop, like there's a part where you're creating characters, but you can also say, hey, does magic exist in our world? What kinds of magic? And you can let them kind of invest a little bit in this one shot that we're going to do, but they get to create certain parts of the world too. Vampires, are vampires real here? Okay, we're going to do vampires this time. Cool. Okay. Do they, what are the tropes around it that are true or not true in this version of it? And they're like, they get to jump in and say, let's say they can't, the sun does hurt them, but running water, that doesn't do anything. That's not okay. We'll put that in. Now we're going to run a cool vampire storyline or a werewolf storyline or something. So I think that's always fun. I like that idea of bringing that creativity in. And it feels like it needs to be more of a party conversation type of game to me versus, I don't know, a rolling and keeping track of things game. It feels like it's more of like a party game. Like you're going to bring people over, you're going to have your decorations out. People are going to be, just having a good time and a lot of, you want them working with each other a lot too.
Yeah.
So, narrative games, narrative TRPGs are great.
Yeah. So 10 Candles came up too, like if you've ever done that,
Candles.
where you're playing like in that's kind of a weird Halloween themed one because it's more of a post-apocalyptic, like everything's going to die at the end, but I like that idea. So, but I don't know, I'm really infatuated with this Monty Cook Darkest House. And I found a review online that was not flattering. Like somebody was like, it's system neutral. Like I call BS on that. They were like yelling at him and stuff for doing all these things. But I think it's like the shock jock of tabletop RPG reviewers. I was like, I think you're doing this just to get attention in a way.
Oh boy.
Because you can be critical and not a jerk, Yeah. Like if it's not for you, that's fine, but you can be critical of it. But I don't know. I like, I really am curious about running that. And then because you can convert things, I was thinking about my Great Modron March people and like, what would 15th level D&D characters, 2 wizards that have access to a crazy amount of spells, like what would that look like for them to be in the Darkest House and have to figure things out? Kind of interesting. So, cool. I don't know. I don't have a Halloween one-shot prepped this season. I think next...
You normally do.
I normally do, I know. But like with the shows and a bunch of other stuff going on, I'm like, I don't know. I'll have to talk to them and see like who wants to come over for a Friday night and run a Kids on Bikes game or something. Because it's just, I have a lot of fun. Kids on Bikes has just become my like Halloween one-shot thing because it's always fun to be like, it's Halloween in 1980 whatever or 1992 and you guys are out trick-or-treating as kids and then anything could happen, like a spaceship lands or you find Bigfoot or like I just love the idea. I think
Call of Cthulhu or any Cthulhu game
that's
would be
another
really
one
good too, probably, or even the board games. What are the board games that are built around that? The
Betrayal
Madness,
House on the Hill,
Madness in the Mansion, something like that. Those type of games with the insanity type things. I think that'd be a fun kind of get the group together to do stuff too. Dark Souls board game could do that.
I'm not a Dark Souls fan, but some people are.
Oh, hot take. No, it's kidding. It's good.
Yeah, and I don't know. I played Dark Souls 1 a lot, and then not enough to finish it, and not enough to care to play the other ones. So that's where.
Or what's the other board game that's like that? The one you've been playing, Gloomhaven? Was that the other one? Oh,
Gloomhaven. That's not spooky. That's just kind of D&D-esque. Like, yeah.
Oh, okay. But there are versions that are more spooky versions, though. Like more Cthulhu versions. I'm thinking same basis of games, but like, I'm trying to remember the name of it. I can't remember now off the top of my head. I'll have to find it. But yeah, I think all of that would be really fun. And you normally you like to record it. You don't not video wise, but like audio. You've done some audio recordings of
I have
some of those
recorded them in
sessions
the past. Last year or 2 years ago, I can't remember, I recorded it, and the audio came out so bad that I never released it. But if you're curious about my past Kids on Bikes games, they're on this channel,
running,
I think.
Alice is Missing.
That would be a good one, yeah.
That could be an interesting one. I've heard a lot of good stuff about that one. We've talked about that one a few times too, and that one's a very interesting one.
Yeah, it's interesting to play, to be text messaging around a table, but I hear it's really good. So that's on my list of things I want to play. Cool. So I got quite a bit of gaming in now that I think about it. We had our Purple Planet game. We've got like 2 sessions left. It's interesting how I've picked apart my Purple Planet, where I'm like, because it comes with all these random extra adventures, and I'm like, oh, I want to do this. So like, when I'm prepping for the night of our DCC game, I'm like, oh, and then I'll go through it. And so they're like, you guys are here and you find this, and they're like, oh, okay. And so it's been kind of like, maybe railroady, where I really just present like, this is what we're doing. I was like, this is what we're doing for the night. But, I don't want to come across that like being railroady is bad, because if your players want that, it's okay. You know, sometimes it's like, I want to go to the town. Well, they chose to go to the town, so just get them to the town. You don't have to like, oh, you're missing out on all this other stuff. Are you sure? Kind of a thing. Like, that's the decision they made. And it was the same thing where I'm like, you guys could go, left or right, but they chose the more interesting thing, and that's usually what I had prepped.
Yeah.
So,
and I had the opposite of that, where I was trying to run an open sandbox game, but like you said, the players thought they were playing D&D and they were on a quest line, so they were constantly trying to find the quest line. I'm like, guys, there's no quest line, it's just a world. I'm just like reacting to what you guys do. They're like, no, where's the main quest guy?
Yeah,
like,
where's the overarching story?
Yeah. I was like, oh, I failed there. I messed that up.
So we've had a lot of fun doing little things, and in this last adventure they found kind of like they're beetle centaurs, like man on the top, a beetle on the bottom kind of creatures.
Ooh,
and they had a hive nest underground, and our players infiltrated this and then found magical radiation and had to do a bunch of stuff. And they were running around trying to figure out like what's going on. Turns out that in the energy source for this like old bunker is a weird geometric anomaly creature that's from another plane of existence that old wizards had trapped into a device to then power the entire building. And so our players, like through kind of just like sheer luck, ended up setting it free. And that was interesting. And then there, on top of that, there's these weird beetle men running around, and they're like, what's happening? So we had a good time. Lots of fights that night, which was kind of cool, because sometimes we just do a lot of exploration and puzzles, but this was like, you open the room, there's 7 more beetle guys. They're like, oh man. And so it's like lots of fun attacks. Beetle guys. And that was really cool. And then last night I ran DCC Dying Earth. I have a 0 level funnel. So, and this was for my friendly local game store. So my game store does every other Friday, they do a game night for RPGs, and you can sign up. And so I've gone a couple times, and that's where I played Call of Cthulhu for the first time. But I was like, I want to run something. So I said, hey, I want to run this DCC. And I wasn't anticipating it to be very popular, but my game, we posted it like late on Monday night, and I looked at it Tuesday morning, and none of the other games, a lot of them 5e games, are even like have like maybe one person, but like mine was completely full, like instantly. Nice. And I was like, oh, cool. And then I talked to my players that night, and they're like, no, we've been like chomping at the bit to play DCC with you, because like you talk about it, you say, you love it and stuff. I was like, oh, so
very cool.
We ran perils, or what did I run? Purple.
You got Purple Planet on the mind.
I do have Purple Planet on the mind. It was the 0 level funnel that came with my Dying Earth setting. And specifically that one is, when I got the DCC Dying Earth, it came with, I think, 10 adventures. And so my goal was, I'll run the funnel, and then I'll just go like 1, 2, 3 and just kind of go up through the levels, because I think it goes to level 6 and then the 7th adventure goes back to like level 2 or something, so I can kind of pick and choose. This one's called Pilgrims of the Black Obelisk.
God, they always have such good names in OSR.
Yeah. And you're in an inn, and the idea is that you guys are doing a long pilgrimage to this city that has a black obelisk, because that is where an ancient prophet of a god ascended to go live with that god. And the idea is that if you follow these like the rules that the god has left behind, and you go on this pilgrimage, he'll reappear, and then you'll be blessed by the deity. And then there's like a weird demon that kind of comes in and is trying to like usurp the deity. And lots of funny things. There are 3 different paths your players can take. So this has a lot of replayability, because it's like if they want to go through the forest, the plains, or the coastline, all have different encounters as they're going through. My players were like, I thought we would die more. Like towards the end, they were just expecting to die more. And I was like, yeah, you guys are surviving pretty well. And then the final like climactic battle happened at the obelisk, and I killed just about everybody. I think one player survived with 2 characters, and everybody else survived with 1 character. And one of my players, the only reason he survived is because his backstory was that he was a bandit. So he's during the big fight where all these demons are coming up out of the ground and people are getting killed, he said, I'm just going to leave and go stand on a building, like on a rooftop. And I'm like, okay. And so that's the only reason he survived, is because he was just out of the line of fire. But I thought that was like legitimate and fun. And they had so much fun. And I like left that night. I was just like on cloud 9. I'm like, man, running games is so cool. I love DCC. This is so fun. So
that's great.
If they want to play it again in 2 weeks, then I think we'll level up those characters that survived and go with the number 1 or the level 1 module. What's that one called?
That's great.
The Laughing Idol of Lar Shan. So
now, had any of them played DCC or? So it was.
They were all brand new.
It was an introduction.
Liked the idea.
You're teaching them the rules. You're playing the game. You're running the game.
All tabletop RPG veterans and D&D veterans, so they all kind of knew how to play D&D. But I take that back. One of them had done a funnel with me earlier. But the rest of them had never. They just were like, I don't know. You're like,
but that's like the quintessential experience, right? That's like some players that don't know the system too well. The DMs super excited about this style of game. They want to teach it to other people, and they want to teach it through playing a session. And then at the end of the session, it resonated with everybody. It was like the perfect fit for the group. And then you go home and it was like everything fell in place. So it was a perfect night, right? Just a perfect night of game.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And we had a blast. Like, I don't know. I had so much fun, and it was like complete strangers, but they were all like really excited to be there. And that was, so it can happen. Cool. Thinking about like my Adventure League days where I'm just like, I don't know if I like this
sometimes.
This was very different from that, and I had a lot of good times. So, and it's fun. Like there's lots of people there playing RPGs, and so if you want the original guy who created this every other Friday event was like, I hope that it allows people to find like-minded people to then start their home game, And so the idea is that it will always be one-shots, but like when you find the right people, you're like, oh, hey, like let's go play on Thursday or something. So
it reminds me of that Gen Con where we're going to play in a Numenera game, but my game gets sold out, and you're like, you showed up. It was like, but then James runs a game, and your guys' table is just going crazy with how fun.
Yeah,
everybody was into it. James is just laying it on thick, and it's going. And our game was great, and we were having fun too. But your table was just like, you could feel the energy of people having such a good time. It was so good. That's what reminds me of that story. Yeah.
So it was super fun. I really think that the adventure, specifically the Pilgrims of the Black Obelisk, is a good one. Nice. And I would recommend that as a 0 level funnel. I think it's fun. Very Dying Earth, and a lot of times we were talking about stuff while we were playing where I'm like, this is more of a Dying Earth thing than a DCC thing. Like people were asking about that. And I was like, yeah, and the world of DCC is really cutthroat. So nobody really wants to help you. Wizards don't want to divulge their secrets because then you know something they don't, and they have less power in just like knowledge, you know? Yeah. So like getting a map of the area, why I might sell you a faulty map or a map that's incomplete or something, but I'm not going to give you the full details because I don't want you to be wealthier than me or have more knowledge than me.
Knowledge is hoarded.
Yeah. And like magic is like, you don't just give away magical secrets. Like you don't do that. So it was kind of interesting, but they fought a hag there was the equivalent of a hag. It was like an evil shadow witch thing in a cottage in the woods, and they found her spell book, and the guy kept trying to read it throughout the whole adventure, but every time he read it he would go crazy because he'd fail the will save, and it was at the very end of the game where he finally made the will save and was like, okay, what do I find? And I'm like, it's a book of like dark magical secrets, and if you level up into this class we can play around with the idea of what you have. And he's like, that's so cool. And so and then with funnels, it's always fun to be like, I never really thought this, but like when you finish a funnel and you're just like, man, this character that survived, he went through a lot. Like you really feel connected to this guy. You're just like, oh, this is so cool. So we'll see how many of them go out and buy like DCC books, you know, just to be like, well, I don't want to wait
on the table next to you for sale.
I want to level up now. Like I better go buy the PDF or something. So
take this to your friends and spread it.
Yeah. So that was really fun. I love the Dying Earth set. I think I think Goodman Games, it's fallen off the wayside as they're really pushing a lot of their other products right now, which is fine. That's what they do. And the DCC 100 has come out. A lot of people have that Kickstarter. It's being fulfilled. I don't have mine yet. But it's weird because like I was really excited about Dying Earth, and I feel like it's like this one and done thing. But Lankmar was kind of like that too, where Lankmar came out and it was kind of this one and done thing. And so we'll see if we get more adventures set in the Dying Earth. But overall, I really like this. I like this as a campaign setting for DC.
And it was a good book to read, right? Like,
the Dying Earth is fun. Yeah, like I read the book, and I haven't read all of the Dying Earth series. There's another book called like Kugel's Saga that has a bunch of stuff, but but no, the books are fun. Like Rialto the Marvelous, so good, and lots of fun stories. And then other than that, I'm struggling to get Pangea players' schedules aligned.
Wait to hear about this game.
So I'm really frustrated with that, but hopefully. Like, I think we were going to try and play today, but like, no, I'm out of town or no this. And I'm like, okay. So, but I don't know. I need to just get them in the same room. I'm like, can we go have dinner sometime? And then I could just be like, okay,
trick them into it.
When are you guys able to play? Let's put it on a calendar kind of a thing. But, you know, people are busy. And when you're trying to, like, it's easy to get 1 or 2 people aligned in schedules. But then all of a sudden, 4 and 5, it's like, there's always going to be one guy that can't make it. So.
Yeah, always that one. And that was like leading into where you were about to bring us. Lucian's week of gaming was very similar to that.
Yeah.
We have several groups that we're trying to get together, but schedules just didn't work this week. So it was like we didn't actually get to play our game. So no advancement on Dungeon of the Mad Mage yet. Next week we're hoping continue that, and I can't wait because I'm just loving that character, loving that campaign. If you love dungeon crawling, if you don't like dungeon crawling, then you probably would never want to play Dungeon of the Mad Mage all the way through. And then our game that I'm running, the campaign, we didn't play last night. I thought we were gonna, but it didn't quite work out. So that just gives me more time to prep. And what was fun about it was I got into Roll20 as I'm prepping the game, and all the fun for a dungeon master who likes to prep things comes back. Like I was making the tokens, and I was seeing all the new features that Roll20 has, and I was creating the character sheets and linking them. I was setting up the line of sight map, and I was tweaking the dynamic lighting and playing around. I was like, all that stuff was the pregame stuff that I haven't done in a long time because it's been almost a year or two since I ran a game. I've been playing more, and it was fun to get back into that prep style. And then me and you have been talking because we like for the last 5 or 10 minutes of our shows, I was hoping I'm going to have you be our big bad guy in the background of this campaign and see how it can affect this campaign. So we were talking a little bit, and I sent you a little message that was like, all right, so if you were this bad guy and you wanted to take over Waterdeep, who would you want to play as that? Like, because I could ask anybody and they might say, well, I want to be a mind flayer, I want to be a hag, I want to be a vampire, I want to be this, and this. So I posed this to you. I gave you a whole night to think about it. What does Jordan's big bad evil guy person want, or is a person that says, I'm going to take over Waterdeep, and why?
So
what'd you come up
with?
This was good.
I'm enjoying this more than I thought when you first brought it up, because I was like, oh man, like you get to have all the fun evil villain thoughts, but you don't actually have to. Not that it's like a chore to run the game, but I just thought that was kind of cool. So if you're set in the Forgotten Realms, because it's like Waterdeep is where you're starting and stuff.
Absolutely.
I love oozes. I think are my favorite monster in D&D, and so I've always had an affinity for Juiblix, who's the demon lord of oozes, and Gonador, who is the drow god of oozes. And I made a drow warlock for an indoor adventurer game that was a priest of Gonador, but he was just a drow warlock. And I was thinking about that character, and I'm like, well, that would be a fun game, I think, or a fun villain, especially if you lean into the fact that they're a priest of oozes in a way, or a priest of Gonador, and then the shape-changing aspect. So maybe, and then that got me thinking about like Deep Space Nine, Star Trek, and the Changelings, and how like you could have a whole cult of these like oozes, and I don't know, maybe use the Changeling from Eberron as like a villain, or I guess you could just use doppelgangers or something for introductory, like what are these creatures that are doing this? But the idea that doppelgangers are somehow trying to take over Waterdeep, so they're impersonating other people. And we were talking about, you wanted to have like something coming up from the water, right? And how
actually the water thing is like the precursor that wrecks Waterdeep, but this gives you the opportunity to take advantage of that destruction. So you don't necessarily have to be affiliated. You're more like, you're taking advantage of this situation to say, oh, now's my time. Because if you tried to do it before, Blackstaff might figure you out, adventurers in Waterdeep might figure you out or find you. But this big disaster might hide your kind of spreading of your fingers or tentacles around, how am I going to do this? And then the other setup I was thinking about last night I was going to bring to you today was I think the place for it, because you even have the name. What was the name you came up with, which was cool?
Zalzag.
Zalzag. Okay, so Zalzag's our
cleric
evil
of
bad
Gonador.
Guy. Love it. And my idea is that you are in your timeline for that character. You have just escaped barely from an adventure group that had caught on to your last plan, whatever it was, whatever you were doing. They almost defeated you. They almost captured you and destroyed you, but you had one last fallback, and it was a teleport circle that was your like getaway card.
Okay.
And you used it. You didn't realize where it was going to bring you to. It just is like, this is my last resort. You did it. You got away from them. Boom, you're in Waterdeep, and now you've been in Waterdeep. You have no resources. You don't know people in Waterdeep, but you're here now. You're hidden. That group may find you in the future, maybe looking for you again because you've gotten away. But right now you're trying to decide, okay, now what do I do that I'm here, and how do I start to gain and gather power, starting from zero, like starting from, I don't have money in my pocket. I have my powers, I have my abilities, and my evil genius brain that, you're like, I can do. So it's like, and that's where I want you to start. Like, once we have that created, then I can say, okay, so this week, what do you do? And I was thinking we could even do something where you just very basic game mechanics to it. Maybe a couple of stats, like almost like a 2d6 plus stat. Maybe there's only the 3 stats for this guy. And it would be like, you could recruit and you might roll or do something, and then we could talk about what the recruiting did. You could build something, or like, there could just be like these basic overarching narrative, what kinds of things
but
would
still
you want to do.
Dice rolls,
we do a
like,
little bit of a roll,
succeed?
A tiny bit. Yeah. So like, a good success, a success with a fallback, or a complication, and then a failure. And then eventually I can work certain ones of those in to see if the players catch on to that and eventually catch on to your trail. It won't be all the time, and it won't be everything you do, but every now and then, like maybe one of your failures presents an opportunity for them to catch this trail of, I think there's some evil going on here. I wonder what this evil is and where is it coming from? Like, so I thought that would be the way we could kind of, and then it would be a very simple, I could type in a thing. You wouldn't have to spend more than 10 or 15 minutes thinking about it one night. Just type it in and we could let a little bit of dice roll in that and run with it. So this is cool. I like that we have a name. I like that we have who they worship. I like, we don't even have to, I don't even think they themselves typically, like you said, we don't have to build a character sheet or anything because this is so far in the future.
Find
They're
a
just
monster
dealing with
stat
your
block
minions.
later.
They're dealing with your plans. They're dealing with what you're trying to do. They don't know you or any of that stuff yet. So I was like, this is gonna be so good. So I really like it. I'm excited. You're excited too. So
no, I think it's cool. And just like talking right now, I think you would. I'm trying to think of like, where do you establish yourself if you have nothing, but like if we're leaning into the impersonation thing, I like the idea of him trying to take over, like a simple shop. Like I was thinking like, you could even be like, I want to take over the Yawning Portal because that has access to like the Underdark and Drow, but it also is like a central hub for him to like recruit people, so maybe it's like he gets a job being a wait staff or something at the Yawning Portal, but eventually will try to take over by like mimicking like a changeling or a doppelganger, like actually changing his form and trying to be the guy that owns the Yawning Portal, or a magic item shop. Like maybe that's another thing where it's like he's going to take over this magic item shop because now he has resources. Like there's magic items and stuff. So
that's going to be your resource, right? Because to me, like you're a bad guy. I need to get resources that are coming in somehow. I need to get information coming in somehow so I can manipulate that and use it to my advantage. Knowledge is power. And I need manpower, right? So those are like the three things you have to figure out. Where do I start getting these things? Because bad guys never want to dirty their hands, right? They always wanted this. We have a plan. I don't want to do it all myself. So like those are like your three resources that you're trying to get more of. And there's never enough. So manpower, information, loot, right? Or just
if I know anything about money. Waterdeep, which maybe I do, then I know about like the masked lords of Waterdeep, and I would probably watch to see who's sending what resources. Like the masked lords are voting to send what resources down to fix the area of Waterdeep that was like destroyed by by whatever came out of the water. And so then I know, okay, this person helped, this person didn't help, and maybe he tries to take the place or like, I don't know, make a deal with the ones that didn't help because it's like, oh, you're like not working. Oh, Xanathar's there too. I forget about thank you, Moa Peach. I forgot he's in there, so could try to like start working with him too, or hire him to do things if I get enough money, like hire his guild to work for that. So.
So okay, so cool. So we have your name, and so the first of your three pillars. We'll just start it right now, right today. We're going to do it right here on the show. Which of the three things that you need to gather? What's the first one? Your first week in Waterdeep. What's the first?
I think I need to find a place to stay. So I think it needs to be like resources. Like I need to find a home base, even if it's temporary, like someplace that I can go and hide and commune with my god and so.
All right. So cool. So after the show, maybe in Discord, we'll do like a dice roll, 2d6 plus. I'm going to figure that piece out. And then we'll do a dice roll and see how successful this week went for you as far as starting to establish your home or security and where you're going to stay in Waterdeep to unravel your plans.
Nice.
So this is good. I love it.
Okay.
Very cool. And that was it. I didn't play a lot of other games. I did play a lot of Starfield, and I will mention to a lot of people, maybe a lot of you are playing it, there are some really cool side quest stuff happening in Starfield that aren't the main storyline. And some of it isn't even through dialogue. It's like you come to a place, you see a scene, and you're like, something's happened here. But then you can follow the crumbs and you can unravel exactly what's happened, whether it's a ghost ship or it's some creatures have come out of a cave and killed the camp kind of thing. And it reminded me that sometimes we can find inspiration from the other media that we consume, games, TV shows we watch, movies we watch, and help that incorporate and inform some of the games and campaigns we're playing. So don't sleep on stealing a little bit of those things. I saw a really cool, there was no dialogue. It was just how the scene was set up. I'm like, I need to put that in my game somewhere, somehow. One of these times they're going to come across that. And it's just all visual. It's not about there's a character there telling you about a quest or sending you there. It's just like, you just come across it and it's a blood stain. And that leads to this story of something terrible happened here. And you get to unravel it. So,
okay. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, and then there's always I'm playing Baldur's Gate 3, but
there you go, another inspiration.
So, yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching. That's our show today. We're really excited that you guys are here watching us. You could always catch us live on YouTube or Twitch. That's youtube.com/ I think SMRPG show. And over on Solutions Twitch.
Yep.
Follow, tell your friends about the podcast and all that other stuff. I was late with the last week's podcast. I'm actually going to edit it after this show, as long with this week's podcast, and get it up there. So sorry about that. I'm just always busy. And then, a new episode of the Jocular Junction coming out on Monday, and I'm working on some Gate Town videos for the main channel. I'm just always busy and tired. Sometimes I want to just read books, and that's what I've been doing. I've been really enjoying like the books that I've been reading. So, we will be back next week. It's birthday month. I believe
so.
Very excited. Birthday in 10 days. So if you want to get me anything,
I do.
Oh, there was a huge Amazon sale too. I felt bad. I don't feel bad now, but like I should have told you guys earlier. I probably did on the Discord and stuff. But I ended up picking up keys from the Golden Vault because I was curious, and because it was $10. I was like, I'll buy that for $10, like 100%. So I thought that was kind of fun. Sorry guys, rambling now, but we'll be back next week with another episode of the Saturday Morning RPG Show. Take care, everybody, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.